Hello everyone, my name is Claire Nightingale and welcome to this session on examining associations. This talk is split into two parts. Going back to our 4 steps in quantitative analysis, now that we have cleaned and coded our data and used descriptive statistics to summarise the data, the next step is to examine associations between variables. When examining associations, we can either look at absolute differences, say between an intervention and a control, or we can quantify the magnitude of difference by calculating a ratio of intervention to control. Both are important, and I will explain why later in this talk. Types of absolute difference measures include mean differences for continuous variables and absolute risk differences. Types of relative differences include the risk ratio and the odds ratio. I'm now going to go through an example which will show the distinction between absolute and relative differences. Let's say that we're examining the effectiveness of a weight loss intervention by comparing a group on the intervention compared to a group of controls. We will consider 2 different outcome variables here. The first is mean weight loss, which is a continuous variable, and the second is, has the participant lost at least 10% of their body weight after the intervention? And this is a binary variable. First, let's look at the mean weight loss. This was 4 kilograms in the intervention group, and in the control group, they lost an average of 1 kilogram. We take the absolute difference between the two, which is a mean difference of 3 kilograms. This means that on average, people in the intervention group lost 3 kilograms more than those in the control group. Now let's look at the second outcome. Did the participants lose at least 10% of their body weight? This is presented here in a 2x2 table. So 70 out of 100 people did lose 10% of their body weight in the intervention group, whereas this figure was 40 out of 100 people in the control group. So in order to compare these, we can use what's called a risk ratio, also known as a relative risk. And we express the risk in the intervention group relative to the risk in the control group. This is 0.7 divided by 0.4, which is a risk ratio of 1.75. So what does that actually mean? Well, those in the intervention group are 75% more likely to lose at least 10% of their body weight compared to the control group. So this gives us the magnitude of the difference between intervention and control. We can also express these data as an absolute risk difference. So if the risk of losing 10% of body weight in the intervention group is 0.7 and the risk in the control group is 0.4, then the absolute risk difference is 0.3. The interpretation of this difference is that the intervention results in approximately 30 individuals in every 100 losing at least 10% of their body weight. Both expressions of difference have their place, but reporting only the relative difference without the context of the absolute risk can be misleading, so it is better to present both. And that concludes part 1 of this session on examining associations. In part 2, we will be looking at measures of association for 2 continuous variables. Thanks for listening.